One of the sharpest guys in real estate in Southern California is Shiva Bhaskar. He's a entrepreneur, runs a business that does credit cleanup, tier one credit. He's an attorney by education and trade, and plays in that role. Very active in real estate investing, particularly in multifamily. I think particularly in South LA and the South Bay. Shiva, thanks so much. And one of my big fans on my podcast. Shiva, thanks so much for making some time today.
Bill, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
And what got us decided to get together today was really to talk about insurance claims post-fire here in Los Angeles. I think both of us see kind of impending doom for people who don't push their strategy and get on it quickly enough. So let's talk a little bit about that. We're talking today on Friday, January 17th. So the fire's still raging in the Palisades. The fire's not out yet. And at some point, people will start making claims. My contention is there's no way the insurance companies have enough to pay out fairly on all the claims that are due. So one of their answers is going to be to attempt to shortchange people. What do you see, Shiva, happening going forward?
Bill, I would concur with that. If we look at the economics of how much of a loss has been suffered relative to what the coverage is, and insurance firms are required to maintain certain reserves and things of that nature. But we have such a distorted market because of things that have happened in the insurance space here in California in the previous, half a decade and really the last 3 years, that I would say that the money is not there. And then so if the full funds required to make people whole are not available, then what happens? And I'll just preface this by saying, yes, I'm an attorney. Yes, I've been, involved with, and personal injury is not my focus. I deal with credit, but I've been involved in that. I don't think insurance companies are automatically always evil or trying to hurt people. So I'll just preface it with that. But as we know, in a situation of the sort we're in here, and if an insurance company understands that they are either insolvent or otherwise unable to pay this, then they are going to look for ways to avoid paying that. And whether it's some condition that was not met by this person or the value. And I think one of the things is, if we have Altadena, we have the Palisades, and then we have parts of Pasadena. And then I know there was a bit in the Valley, but for the most part, those ones. Bill, you and I were talking before we came on. The market is it's not clear what the market and the values are at the moment, just because everything's in flux. What is someone willing to pay for a fire damaged property or lot? We don't truly know at the moment, and it's a week out. So what the value is of these properties could be argued to be hazy, combined with insurance can delay it. So I don't see any universe where everyone gets paid what they would like. Not to mention a lot of folks, again, said without judgment, just a statement of fact, many people are heavily underinsured, particularly in the Palisades, relative to home values. Again, because of things at the state level and the regulation. So I think we're in a bit of a perfect storm here, to be frank. I believe long-term in Los Angeles, but in this particular situation, I think this is going to be tough.
So there's a couple different scenarios that you covered. I think that's the spectrum. One is underinsurance, right? If you have a house that's, say, worth $2 million retail, the question is, how much is a burned down house insurance claim? The insurance company is going to say enough to rebuild it. But that's also rebuilding in normal markets. In a market like this, where there's so much demand, inevitably the cost of labor goes up, the cost of supplies goes up. And so what might have been a fair return 3 months ago for a burned down house isn't going to cover the cost to rebuild an entire house, I don't think, 6 months from now or a year from now, right?
That's exactly right, Bill. Because what you kind of hit upon is, again, we're in a market that's in great flux, which means, for people who are familiar from whether in the stock or the real estate world, there hasn't been a lot of price discovery yet of what is this really worth in terms of the land we were talking about earlier, but also in terms of these, as Bill knows, I enjoy reading other real estate folks and legal folks on Twitter, and there's a lot of people who write interesting things. And someone pointed out, they said, what comp are they using? Because there's developers who are building fourplexes and duplexes brand new in South Los Angeles and East LA, tearing down a single family and doing that. And some of these guys are almost heavily, they're general contractors. They're able to get it done at this price. Or if we look at an apartment developer, I have a general idea of what a few of the developers who are active on the West Side and in Koreatown, what they spend. But these are people building in big bulk as you know.
Right.
They have a lot of volume. What they pay is not what the homeowner in the Palisades pays. And
Right.
so what price per foot to rebuild is even applicable? Because if you go say 200 a foot, that may work for a developer. There's no way that a homeowner, particularly apartments, are not at the same quality as a house in the Palisades. What are they going to pay? I think that's where a lot of the problems are going to come up as well, because those numbers are not clear right now.
The second problem is going to be the depreciated value of the property, meaning if you had a $2 million house, and let's say it's a 2,000 square foot home in the Palisades and it burns down, to get the money to rebuild a 2,000 square foot home isn't oftentimes what your insurance is going to be, because your home might have been built in 1950 or 1960. So you're going to get maybe 60 or 70% of that cost. And now if you want to build a brand new 2,000 square foot home, you've got to come up with some additional cash to make that work. And there are many people who won't be able to do that. So there's going to be a gap there as well.
Correct. Yeah, that shortfall, I think the stat that I saw, I think another realtor who's active in the area mentioned this, I can't recall who, 40%, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, something around 40% of the population in the Palisades is over the age of 55. Now,
Yes.
This is not to say that people who are, you could make one argument that folks who are older and have had more time to build up assets may have more money, but the reverse is true also. If you're a certain age and let's say they've been retired for a little while, they may not be actively working. Well, income is not necessarily coming in, which means if you have that shortfall, it's terrible. I mean, for someone who's in their 30s or 40s and owns a house and has a family, it's terrible for them. But for someone who's older and doesn't have the money, it's like, it's tough. And so I think you're really looking at, you're looking at a very sort of confusing situation, because this is a very unique market. You know, I know an apartment ownership firm that buys and upgrades apartment buildings, and in their investment pitches, they do this in the west side of LA and along the coast. One of the things, Bill, they would say in their pitch, they would describe this as an irreplaceable, non-replicatable location, by which I mean the west side of LA. And I would agree with that description. The problem is, in a situation like this, putting valuations and rebuilding becomes hard for that very same reason.
Right. Another factor is going to be, who's the first person built on the block or the second. You have a block of 20 homes and they're all burned down. There's a difference between living in the Palisades 3 months ago in a nice community with neighbors, and friends, and you can walk safely, versus if you're the first or second house built in your neighborhood, you may not want to live in that situation. Or if you have kids, you may not want your kids running around where there's a majority of neighbors are just burnout lots, maybe with dangerous materials, dangerous, chemicals. Who knows what's going on in some of these places? And so the valuations become very difficult, and it almost destroys any possible third-party sales of these properties at a fair market value.
Correct. Yes. What you brought up, it sort of brings to mind like a random story, but when my parents, from India to New York City and then to New York to LA, when they moved out here, I remember my mom specifically vetoed a neighborhood in the LA area. I won't say which one, but it's a very, very nice area, because we went to that block. It was just me at the time. My sister hadn't arrived yet. And she's like, you know what? I don't feel like there are a lot of kids in this area. And besides our friends, who's he going to play with or hang out with? Who's going to be around? If I have to go somewhere, what other parent here can I leave him with, or vice versa for them? And so no, I think any parent who's looking today would make that same calculation, not to mention the environmental impact. We don't, Bill, to your point about price and what this is worth, these are very expensive homes. We have many, I don't want to say there's many places on the coast you can live, but folks can go to Orange County and Newport Beach, or even to Palos Verdes or Manhattan Beach, and live near the beach without living on a burned out site that may have chemical issues or, environmental impact for themselves or their families. We don't know what kind of things this is going to cause. And so I think that's going to create a real sort of hitch in the whole idea of valuing these properties, because we don't know what someone who can buy an $8 million house and could live in Newport, they could live in PV, they could go to San Diego, Beverly Hills. We don't know what they're going to do. That's the other issue.
And meanwhile, those markets are very tight inventory-wise. And so you add another couple thousand people perhaps looking for those houses, that those markets are going to be under pressure and people have to pay more than they thought. And so all this, I think, combines to so many, and I would just say the vast majority of people who are going to make insurance claims for one reason or another are not going to get what they're going to feel is a fair claim, whether it be because of economic factors or insurance company failures or just the effects of the natural disaster or the mismanagement of the city, you're going to have a huge number of people who are going to be at the same time applying to the same companies. We're overwhelmed. They have all these insurance companies have legal departments, but I'm sure all those legal departments can be overwhelmed with reviewing, even if they want to really review fairly these situations. So, my advice to people from a business point of view is if you have a claim, get in as early as you can. Better be first in line than the back of the line. The back of the line, I know, is not going to get paid a fair amount. These companies are going to face bankruptcy before that happens. But the front of the line, I would imagine the insurance companies will try to hold the line on claims, and people will start getting claims. What are your options? You paid your insurance, you paid your taxes, you have your property, you make a claim. Is the time to get the legal help when you make your claim? Is it time to make it once the insurance company denies it or shorts your claim? How should a homeowner proceed, knowing, I think, odds are you're going to get unfair response?
Yeah. So, Bill, that's a great question. And as with any question you ask attorneys, I suppose we have a saying, 3 attorneys, 4 answers. So I preface that to say that what I'm saying is one sort of voice on a spectrum of voices. But one thing that is positive that's happening, and where I'm genuinely gratified and proud of what some of our colleagues who are in the injury and catastrophic injury and damage space are doing. Right now, you have law firms, and I mean, Bill, I know one. Bill can connect us if it's relevant to anyone watching. There are multiple law firms. Some you have to shop around and know it's the right one. I can certainly suggest a couple of them that I know are very, very good attorneys in general that are helping free of charge folks prepare to claim. And there's no obligation that you use that firm in the event that you're not happy with the claim amount. But the lawyer is sitting there and helping you, the paralegals are, and they're putting this forward. And yes, obviously an attorney is doing this in part because they're thinking if you don't get paid and they have a relationship with you, they may be able to get business, they may not, we'll see. But you do have skilled attorneys and their teams that are helping with this. My general suggestion to most folks would be to pair up with one of those law firms. They're not charging you a fee like the one that I'm thinking of that my friend has. He's like, hey, we're going out there right now. He's been in Altadena. He's had meetings with people in Palisades, going all over. He has no clear idea, Bill, of whether these folks are going to become his clients, but his firm will take on the expense and the effort of helping put together these claims. If someone gets a fair offer, they'll give an honest opinion. This is fair. You should take it. If not, they'll litigate. And so I would suggest, in a normal case where you're the one house that had something happen, it was not a systemic or a neighborhood issue, I would not say in that case you need to get a lawyer involved early on. Today, I think everyone should have not just a attorney, but an attorney who has real experience taking on insurance companies in these cases. Right. Everyone in the situation in Palisades, Altadena, Pasadena, wherever, I would argue, Bill, they should have an attorney on day one helping them. Whether they choose to work with him or her in the event that they're not happy with the claim, they can make that decision then, but have someone who knows how to get this done, because people are going to get paid in part because of the paperwork being properly in order. And if they work with the right person, I think they're going to get a better outcome from the start. So, yeah.
I would caution my clients and friends and family that this is kind of like when the PPP loans came out. I know there are firms that help companies apply, and before they ran out of money, they got loans to help them through a critical phase for their company. And I also would remind people, this is kind of like the fire hydrants. They run out of water at some point. There's nothing they can do. And you want your house to get the water before they run out. And I said with insurance, the claims are going to be, I am confident. There's one thing I know is the vast majority of people who file claims are going to feel they got shorted because they're just, the economics are such that there's not enough money to make up for the insurance claims that people are going to put together. There just isn't. And so better be at the front of the line and have your case presented as fairly as possible. And Shiva, offered to me to have any clients and friends of mine that he would be glad to get involved with them. And so I want to share his information. He's an attorney. He also runs Tier 1 Credit. That's how we get involved with him more regularly, is helping customers with credit problems. His phone number is 310-968-5547. His email is shiva@tier1credit.com. We'll put that in the description below. And so describe a little bit. Somebody gives you a call. You're going to kind of help them understand what their options are, and then I introduce them to your attorney friend who's actually going to put the package together for them.
That's exactly right, Bill. The first thing that I'd want to know is, okay, where's this person located? Obviously the property address, how long they've owned, but I mean, we can find that out pretty easily. And the other thing that I'd want to know, and I think anytime when you're getting involved with an attorney in any matter, particularly litigation, but even I know you work with a lot of estate planning and probate attorneys, the number one thing that a lawyer should always ask is, what's the goal here? What's the outcome? My assumption for most folks would be that their goal is to get paid out fairly and be made whole. And they can't, the truth is they can't be made whole. I mean, you lived in a place a certain amount of your life and you built these memories there, and you work to get that. The truth is that insurance never makes up for it. The same way that, how do we make someone whole who was paralyzed in a car accident, right? We don't, but the law does say that we have to put a dollar amount on that. And so what I want to understand is what the situation is. What are they sort of, what would an ideal outcome look like for them? If we have someone who they have young kids and their goal is to get a decent payout and move on and go buy a house somewhere else. Maybe they want to move to Manhattan Beach. Maybe they're tired of California. They want to leave. Whatever it is, understand that first, because that tells us. I mean, if someone just says, hey, if I can get to this number, I want to move on. My advice for them would be a little bit different. A, depending on what number they're actually offered, and B, depending on what their horizon is, versus someone who's like, no, I want to stay in the LA area. I had a $7 million house. This is what I should get. I'm willing to fight for a while. So I just want to understand that. And then I think we'd want to recap. And I'll say this for your audience so that even whether someone contacts you or me or not, they know. Folks, in insurance, documenting everything is the number one thing you can do. You're going out and renting another place somewhere else right now because of this. You want to be documenting all the costs involved with that. You get estimates to rebuild or rehab a house, get multiple ones, find out what it involves, get details. What I'm trying to say is successful claims, particularly if they go to litigation, come down in part to documentation combined with having legal counsel who can help you. But the documentation part, your lawyer can help. But if you take the lead on it, it's going to help you a lot. So really, just as difficult as it is, everyone's headspace, be recording kind of what's going on. What are things costing you? What expenses are you incurring? Because all of that's going to be relevant to your case when it comes down. And yeah, when I talk to someone, I'll kind of walk them through how I'd recommend doing it. But really, it's just keeping the ball on these things, because this can go on for years, quite frankly. That's the disheartening part about it. But there is justice at the end of the day for folks, I think, in many cases. But it'll take a while, Bill. I'll be the first to say that.
What are our expectations? I think in my mind, I would say somebody who's filing a claim today, unless you accept the claim insurance company's going to give you within 30 days, which is always going to be a lowball offer. I mean, their business strategy is to trade off your pain for comfort, and they give you a lower offer. You accept it, they save some money. That's built into their process, unfortunately. What should somebody expect if somebody really wants to fight and hold out for what they think is fair value for what they're entitled to and are willing to go through the process? Are you talking months? Are you talking years? I guess it's such a large group of people. How long do you think, nobody has a crystal ball, but what are your assessments on how long people have to wait to get a fair settlement?
I would have to kind of estimate in the direction of years, Bill, and I'll tell you kind of where my thinking is on that. So if we assume that someone didn't get a fair claim, okay, let's shift a bit to the auto accident context, because I think that can help color a bit of what we're talking about here. If you are not happy with the auto accident settlement and you decide to go out and get an attorney to help you, and let's say that you hire a solid attorney relative to the size of your case, that attorney is normally going to do a demand and do back and forth with the insurance company and with their people, the adjusters and all that. That process alone on a medium-sized case can often run for up to a year, okay? We're talking before there's any court filing or litigation. Then it goes to court and it goes there. I have a case involving a former employee and dear friend of mine. He was injured during the pandemic in a multi-car accident that was caused by someone who was at work for a mechanic and was driving. He has an excellent attorney who's a friend of mine representing him, and the case is going on 5 years. Okay, and that's an auto case, which is very well-defined parameters. So this could go for years. and people want to be certain that they're willing to hold for that, you might have to take the option of, okay, low ball offer on a month after they filed a claim. And then maybe your attorney haggles a bit, and then, okay, they're able to get the number up in 6 months. Or then maybe they try to sue and bring experts and do the whole thing, but then you're talking years. And people will have to make some hard decisions, because if there's no guarantee that you're going to get the $3 million, or let's say it's Altadena to $1 million, but you'll get 400 today, or you'll get 2 mil today, and that money lets you move on and buy another house, do you take it? I think that's something that only the families and the people involved can answer.
Right.
But I will say, in general, you have to have an appetite for this going a while if you really want to maximize. And then there's also a risk, because we don't know at the legal end how much money is going to come. We're in uncharted waters also, in that, the state government of California is one party. Nationally, we have another party. It's not a partisan point, by the way, but we don't know how that's going to apply. Are there conditions on aid that's given? What's going to happen? There's a lot of unknowns. So I'd say having a good attorney who can navigate it will help, and then really understanding in your heart what your goal is. If you have young kids and your goal is to move on and take the money and move to Newport Beach or Manhattan Beach, and you get an okay offer that lets you do that, there is an argument that that's what you should do instead of fighting it longer. On the other hand, if you're willing to fight and you have the means, then by all means, go for it.
One of the things that I haven't heard anybody talk about, but in my mind stands out as a possibility, is that insurance companies can turn and say the liability is with the county or city, in that they didn't have the proper water resources. Let's talk about specifically the Palisades. And I don't mean to get political, but insurance companies would do anything not to pay a claim. They're going to be very much down on the fire department. And I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody in particular politically. I'm just saying, it seems to me a natural claim of the insurance companies, hey, we underwrote insurance based on there being water in fire hydrants. There wasn't water in certain fire hydrants. Therefore, on those cases, your claim is not with insurance. Your claim is with the city of LA or the county. Is that a possibility? And of course, the city or county are be exempt or can make themselves exempt with laws. So where does that play into the complication of this process, or does it?
That's a very interesting one, Bill. And it's one that we've been exploring, because as we know, governments can be held liable for certain types of misconduct in certain contexts. The city of Los Angeles pays out tens of millions of dollars every year in either employment law claims for wrongful termination by their employees, and even more with the Los Angeles Police Department or the county with the Sheriff's Department in police brutality claims, some of which have a great deal of merit, some of which don't. But that's the way it is. So we already see that there's things where they can be held liable. Now, government sort of being asleep at the wheel and missing in action, I think there's an argument there. And Bill will know, I'm rarely the guy who agrees with the insurance companies or big companies, but I don't think that such an argument is entirely unfounded here, because if we didn't have water into hydrants, if the response was not proper to what it was, and we're hearing things about what the fire chief said versus what the mayor said versus what the county supervisor said, if those things can be proven, and at first glance it appears that they can, you and I have been following this, I think there's something like that. And Bill, that goes to another point, which is slightly off the insurance topic, but the city of LA just suffered, as well as Pasadena, but let's look at LA first. They just suffered a big drop in potential property tax revenue, in that all those houses that sold in the last 5 years for these astronomical prices. Now the land is worth a large portion of it, but how much is the land worth? You can contest the assessment. You have a lot of issues, not to mention people who've been wronged and hurt in this. If they don't have the financial means, they might just walk away and not pay the property tax, and then you're stuck with this. What happens? So I think the county and the city are facing hits to property taxes because office buildings are worth less. When they trade now, we have buildings that were worth $100 million in 2014 that are selling for $30 million now, which means those taxes go down. Now this, so you could have a situation where the county faces liability, the city faces liability, but their finances are so shaky. And I'm never one who likes to be an alarmist and say, oh, the city of LA, go file bankruptcy. I mean, we almost had it in New York in the 70s, but I don't know. I think we're in very uncharted territory here. And, do the American people as a whole, does the country as a whole, people in every state and everywhere, should they be held responsible in indemnifying or paying for mismanagement that happened buy a place like Los Angeles? Like, can I justify going and telling my extended family who are in New York or in North Carolina that they should be paying their federal tax dollars? And this, I don't know. So I think that's unknown as well.
And I think for the next 4 years, come Monday, unlikely, right? For the past 4 years, the Biden administration seemed very willing to bail out bluer states, New York, California, Illinois, and did so, I think, during COVID to a large degree, and helped us eliminate budget deficits and determine surpluses. Whereas you already hear rumblings from the new incoming administration saying, well, we're not going to give any money to California unless they get their act in order, which is a pretty harsh statement. And again, not evaluating the politics, but just evaluating the money. The flow of money won't be as easy the next 4 years as it was the last 4 years, as far as the state and county and city are concerned. So all these are all, I think, parts of a perfect storm. And anybody who is in a situation with a loss should take this very seriously. And I was listening the other day to one of the politicians saying, be patient. This is not time for patience. This is time for diligence. This is time for preparation, hard work. And if you have a claim, I would say as soon as practical, as soon as proper, get started. And one thing you might do is start getting your team together. And the last thing I would say to Shiva is, the thing I appreciate you're offering, it's like a free audition. The attorney is doing work for free, but really he's showing you, saying, here's how I operate. And you can watch that and say, is that the person I want to have represent me? Yes or no. But for free, you can see what they actually do, not their website, not some Yelp testimonials, but their actual work. Are they on time? Do they make their appointments? Is their paperwork done properly? So to me, it's a fantastic opportunity. That's why we decided we want to record this. So Shiva, again, will be reached. I'll put his phone number and email below. Thanks. It's always a pleasure talking to you, but thank you so much for making this available to my customers and my clients and the community as a whole. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Bill. Always a pleasure.
And we'll be in touch.